Um, I grew up in like a lower middle class, we weren't wealthy growing up, but like depression was just something like rich folk had. And so, I don't know, but circumstances that can, from low income families at least, it's usually like, okay, pray to God, and it's gonna be you ungrateful. You got food on your table, you got food on your plate, and etc. And so many people might not even view it as medication, like maybe people might not view it as a problem to seek help for, at least depression, especially piling that on top of like the problems that you are finding a place to stay.
Something that was repeated was just affordable housing. I'd argue that affordable health care. And just the fact that alcohol and drugs are just so readily available and there's access. So, the kid tries it, and anyone tries it, I should say, and it does whatever it does for that person, and it gives them that need, and it fills it for them. They're going to keep doing it if it's a need to them.
Go ahead.
I've been told by our youth that they really want to get tanked at night so they can sleep. Because if they're in the shelter and they're in a room with another 20 people, for some of them that's very difficult to sleep in that kind of situation. People making noises and getting up and down during the night. And if they're out, on the street sleeping, they want to try to get through the night. They don't want to be up wakeful and wandering around, because then the police are going to stop them and move them on and hassle them. So just being able to knock themselves out is a big factor.
Like, I don't know, I feel like everybody just does that to self-medicate, because whether it's because like you're trying to fall asleep at night because you're homeless, or it's because you feel like the only way that you can interact in college and like make friends is to drink. Like you're trying to treat something. You're trying to treat your like being uncomfortable in a setting, like having a conversation. So I think that this is just like really just rampant in American culture, and like how drugs and alcohol are just so glamorous, like the party scene, like so glorified, and like, or just like going to Cal, like the pressure of having to perform, having to like live up to the standards of whether it's your professor or your family or like whoever is like depending on you to get through this, and it's just like that's a medication. It's like, oh my gosh, like I have this final, like, oh, let's go get a beer, you know what I mean? Or like, let's go to Kiss or something like that and come up on a deal. So I think that it's just like everybody's trying to like heal in their own ways, and that as a society we're just like very deeply hurt, whether it's by privilege or lack of.
If you work hard, you can make it. Pull yourself up with the bootstraps, which is completely false. So we're living with that expectation, and then a very marginalized, disenfranchised population. So we're in there. So it's kind of like, how could you not self-medicate? You know what I mean?
Is just different drinking cultures between the two. Both, I think there's statistics out there that say that when folks are drinking or self-medicated, there's like a binge culture in both of them too, which is unhealthy in both scenes. I know one thing that's pretty interesting to me too is also just like how do the police treat both of them too. Folks are very fast to criminalize, somebody with an open container in public, but kind of turn the other way when you look at like the fraternities and sororities on the Hill, which have the privilege of drinking inside, or even just amongst themselves.
Being associated with an institution, or all these things.
All those college kids, right? Versus like this lazy bum, just how these assumptions get thrown on people.
And just like intersectionalities, like I think it's also amplified with just like youth being criminalized as well. Because even like when I was homeless, I remember one specific incident when I was in downtown Santa Fe, and I had like met up with I was with my friend, and then we were like with this other couple, and they decided to get a bottle of wine, and then we were like outside because like we don't have a place to go, and basically, these cops rolled up, and then we tried to distance ourselves from the bottle, and then they ID'd all of us, and I was underage, but I didn't drink, like, because I was underage, and also because, like, I'm not really a big drinker anyways, and so, I remember the cop, they, like, as soon as they saw my ID, was like, oh, like, jackpot, like, let's get her, and it was all like, all right, I'm gonna need you to, like, stand over here, and then I was like, why? I didn't drink, and then he just started laughing at me, like, yeah, like, I really believe that, and I was like, dude, don't you have like the little breathalyzer thing? Like, go get it, you know what I'm saying? And like, he was really like laughing, like, are you sure you want to do that? And I'm like, yes. And I breathed in, it's like 0.00, and he had to let me go. But it was really just like this idea, like, there's no possible way that you could be a youth and you could be outside next to a bottle and not have drunk. Like, it was just like invaluable to him. Like, I had to ask him multiple times to get this breathalyzer to prove myself. So I felt like definitely just the criminalization that happens like that, and like also like all the backup cops that are getting called, like 3 cops by the end of it.
I think one of the things that strikes me is the fact that, you know, youth who are experiencing homelessness have similar percentages like college youth. I think for college-going youth, I think one of the things that strikes me is kind of in how each group would probably conceptualize like mental health concerns in general, and I think I would say that there are folks in both groups who I think are experiencing tremendous lack of access to a variety of resources around mental health and different ways of like thinking about it. But I would still say that it sounds like on a college campus there are at least different possibilities or outlets that are at least that exist, I would say, and there's a way in which it's centralized on a college campus, whether it comes through the arts or whether it comes through actually finding a resource that's in a more medicalized sense, but I would say I still feel as though for youth who are experiencing homelessness, there's not even that basic structure to work within to kind of access that. It automatically is going to be stigmatized, it's automatically going to be termed as self-medicating, even if there are infinite nuances to why they're going about engaging with alcohol or other substances, I would say.
Going back to earlier when someone was talking about street families and how people don't necessarily want to give up their street families and move to some type of like more stable housing. Like who am I to be like, oh no, you have to give up your street family and get a job or do something like that, which kind of makes it this whole like savior complex. Like it's a very fine line between you being like, oh, like I want to help you and like, oh, I want to help you, but my motives are to save you.
The people who are diagnosed clinically depressed are the ones who have the chance to sit down with a therapist or have a doctor, right? For everyone else, people who can't afford it, people who don't have health insurance, people who have a social stigma against it, for everyone else, being depressed is just something that you have to figure out on your own. And so in thinking about like policies that will affect the homeless community, like I think disability and mental health conditions really need to be a part of that discussion.
Maybe the number is the same. I feel like even though my friends and I still today like self-medicate with drugs or alcohol and stuff like that, it's and especially when I was going through more mental health stuff, it was one out of a plethora of options I had to deal with things. If I'm really upset, I can go and talk to a friend, I can go call my parents, I could go call my therapist, I could decide maybe I want to go back on medication, or I could have a drink. But when all of those other lifelines aren't there, even though I would still say, yeah, I self-medicate with drugs or alcohol, and there's only one thing, it's that every day. I think like that's a really big difference, is that like while you could still identify as self-medicating with drugs or alcohol, it's like, is that just one of a whole table full of options that you have to help yourself get through whatever you're getting through, or is that one of 2 instead of 8, or the only thing? And when it is like that, I feel like it's much more of a danger to form habit-forming behavior with it, and it can cross over from self-medicating to being pretty harmful.